What's up, guys? Ricky here. Do you love Most Valuable Podcasts? And are you like myself where things that you like, you just have to let people know because they've got to be on your t-shirt at all times? If you do, you're in luck because we got Most Valuable Podcast t-shirts. You've probably seen myself, Dave, Mark, Sean, Brandon. You might have seen us wearing these t-shirts in videos. The good thing is now you can get your hands on one too. How do you do so? First off, send us an email, mostvaluablepodcast@gmail.com. Give us your name, your size, your address. We will then send you an invoice through Square. That's how you'll pay for it, $22 per shirt. And then after we get the money, we will send you a great Most Valuable Podcast t-shirt for you to wear so you can tell everybody that you love listening to Most Valuable Podcast. So go check it out. The directions are also in the description. What are you waiting for? We got the shirts just for you.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast right here on Most Valuable Podcasts, your one-stop shop for college football, college basketball. But Brandon, we're looking at college football today, but not about games and about the college football playoff. We're doing our first big board of the season. We are looking NFL draft here, giving our top 25 for our big board, our first one of the year. And we're going to get into that in a second, but I got to do some important housekeeping. And we have a new item on the housekeeping, and that's MVP t-shirts. You can get your own Most Valuable Podcast t-shirt. Every step is down below in the description, but all you got to do is email us your name, your size, your address. We will then send you an invoice through Square to set that whole thing up and get yourself an MVP t-shirt. Again, all that is down below in the description. Also, patreon.com. If you have not already, check it out. Patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. You like what we're doing here? Want to help support us? That's how you do it. Down below, we got Jake, we got Christian, we got Patrick helping us out. Thank you to you guys. Need some more support, though. Check out Patreon down below. And then also the last thing, I say it every week, if you're on iTunes or you have an iTunes, please go and give us a 5-star rating for the Primetime Podcast, but also do the same for the Onside Kick, Rick and Johnny Podcast, and the Fast Break. It would really help us out, and we'd be really appreciative if you would go ahead and do that and give us that 5-star rating. But Brandon, housekeeping is out of the way. It is now time for our first ever big board for the Primetime Podcast and really Most Valuable Podcast. We are breaking history here on Most Valuable Podcast with our first ever big board. So how we're gonna do it overall? If you're on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, it's the whole thing. You're gonna get 21 through 1 or 25 through 1. You just gotta sit here and listen to us. If you're on YouTube, it'll be 3 individual videos, and we're gonna start with 16 through 25. Kind of talk about these guys for the viewers at home, not the viewers, the listeners at home that can't see the graphic. Brandon, I'll let you go first. How about you run us through your 16 through 25 for the 2018 Big Board 1.0?
Do you want me to start at 25 and go to 16, or 16 to go to 25?
Whatever you want. You
25 to go to 16. I think it makes more sense. 25 to 16. So starting at 25, I've got Harold Landry, linebacker from Boston College. Then at 24, I've got Mason Rudolph, quarterback, Oklahoma State. 23, Denzel Ward, cornerback of Ohio State. At 22, I've got Connor Williams, offensive lineman at Texas. At 21, Christian Wilkins, defensive lineman, Clemson. At 20, Joshua Jackson, cornerback, Iowa. At 19, Clellan Ferrell, defensive end, Clemson. At 18, Mike McGlinchey, offensive tackle, Notre Dame. At 17, Deron Payne, D-tackle, Alabama. And at 16, the fun name, Chukwuma Okafor, offensive tackle, Western Michigan.
Yeah, good thing that Okafor is not on mine because I would have so much trouble saying his name. But my 25, I almost said top 25. My 25 through 16, though, we'll start with my 25. I'll do it the same way you did it. At 25, running back from Stanford, we got Bryce Love. Then at number 4, a Heisman finalist. It was announced tonight. We got Lamar Action Jackson, quarterback from the Louisville Cardinals. Then at number 23, friend of the show, defensive lineman from Michigan, Mo Hurst, cracking in to the big board. He's a lot higher on yours than mine, but he's still on the big board nonetheless for both of us. Then number 22, another Heisman finalist, quarterback from Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield. Number 21, the cornerback from Iowa, Josh Jackson. Number 20, offensive tackle from Texas, Connor Williams. Number 19, defensive lineman from Clemson, Christian Wilkins. Number 16, offensive tackle, Oklahoma, Orlando Brown. 17, linebacker from Georgia, Roquan Smith. And then at 16, the cornerback from Ohio State, or the Ohio State, we got Denzel Ward. So we're going to kind of look through some of these guys, talk about a few of them. We got some of them lined up, but Brandon, I'm going to kick it to you. One guy you wanted to talk about. This guy is a lot higher on my big board than he is on your big board. Number 25, the linebacker defensive end hybrid from Boston College, Harold Landry. I'm going to ask you just plain out, why'd you have him at 25 first off? What was your thought process here?
Well, see, here, the reason I had him at 25 is I would have had him higher. Injury in the last 4 games, held him out. And I think that we saw some really good things from him even in this season, even though he was injured. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years ago, we saw some good things. He did well. He was very, I don't want to say mediocre, but he wasn't like way up here. He was just kind of towing the line. But then last year, boom, way up there with his 16 and a half sacks. Mm-hmm. And then 5 sacks again this year, 8.5 tackles through the first 8 games of the season. Certainly not even the pace that he was last year, but still good. But I put him down here at 25 because of the injury. But I probably could have had him higher, but there's so many good players. This whole board, 1 through 25 for me, if you gave me it to do again right now, I would probably have people in different spots. I mean, that's just...
Or new additions.
That's honestly just how it goes. But I think that he is one of the most talented linebackers in this class and then for this draft. And this is a guy who I think already believed that he was NFL ready. He said he basically came out and said he could have been in the NFL last year, but he came back this year to Boston College again. And this is a guy who is able to get creative. Now, he's going to get very, very creative in terms of what he's able to do. He doesn't necessarily have the speed off the corner, but he has the technique. That's where I talk about creative and his technique and his ability to do that, because he won't beat you with his speed. But this is a guy who reminds me of a D Ford, Vic Beasley in the NFL right now with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons, respectively. Some guys who have had some success. Mm-hmm. And I really think that Harold Landry can have that success. I think you have to go back to his season last year. 16 and a half sacks. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. He was by far the number 1 guy last season. The ankle injury to him sitting out the last 4 games is something to monitor. But you can't forget about the overall, body of work that he's really put in his time at Boston College and his time in college. He's done just a great job. He's a talented guy and someone who I think will bring a lot in terms of what he can bring with his strength, with his ability, with his technique, and being able to do all of that. He'll be able to bring a lot to a club.
The big thing I love about Harold Landry, and I'm not going to reveal where I have him, just know that he's higher on my big board than he is Brandon's, but the thing I love most about Harold Landry is his versatility, and that is being able to, in a 3-4 defense, he can play outside linebacker, or it's like, great, I have a 4-3 defense, he can play defensive end. And because he has that, like you said, He's not a guy that's raw talent. I've got that raw speed in the outside. I'm going to beat you, because he's more of a technical guy, has the technique. I feel like any single coordinator in the draft, any team could look at him and go, do we got the personnel to bring the best out of him? Do we basically have the personnel defensively to bring out his junior season, the 22 tackles for loss, the 16.5 sacks in that season? Do we have that? The only thing that I think will knock him, and why I feel like if he didn't have the ankle injury, 25 would be criminally low. But because of the ankle injury, it was even one when I was ranking these, where I looked at it and I went, how's that ankle going to affect a guy who's basically coming off the edge? And you can have the best technique in the world, but if that ankle isn't as strong as you want it to be, that's going to affect you in some way coming off if you have to favor one foot basically more so than the other one. So that's going to be the big question to me as we go through on Harold Landry. Is he's a versatile guy, he has the technique, but how's that ankle holding up? How's that injury doing? And if we have lingering questions about that, that's the one thing that could make him fall.
Yeah, that's the thing that did it for me, is that he was injured these last 4 games, still injured right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's different. And, let me reveal this right now. It's different for a guy like a Josh Rosen, who was injured a season ago, but now is back. Again, he did get injured actually in one of his last games, but he had that injury. He came back. He had a pretty much entirely healthy season. But when you are dealing with an injury here towards the end, that's where the question comes up of, is this an injury that not that you won't be able to get past, but is this something that's going to linger? That would be my question. And
that's the one thing I would expect. Even if the ankle is healing up nicely, I expect him to not even play against Iowa. Don't even play the Pinstripe Bowl. You don't need to do it. Look on to the NFL draft. I do want to move on, though. 2 quarterbacks that me and you have down here. I technically had 2 quarterbacks down here, but we're going to save Baker Mayfield for a later segment. I want to look at Lamar Jackson and Mason Rudolph, the 2 quarterbacks that both you and I had at 24, because these are guys that Lamar Jackson to me, I feel like is a guy that he has the athletic ability to be in the NFL. Is that going to be enough to make him a quality starting NFL quarterback? I don't know. It could, but I kind of have a feeling that he could be a guy that sneaks in late in the first round. But Mason Rudolph, another guy, even though I didn't have him on mine, he's a guy that I look at and I go, I wouldn't be surprised if for me right now, I see him as an early second. Wouldn't be surprised if a team said early second, let's take Mason Rudolph. Let's grab him. What was your thought process here, having Mason Rudolph at 24?
So my thought process with Mason Rudolph at 24 was that I think he improved in a lot of different areas. One of them was accuracy, another decision-making, and a third is pocket presence. So this is a guy who every single year got better. Every single year. You can just see statistically his numbers got better, but I think that's also because his awareness, his things like pocket presence and everything, they improved year after year after year.
Yeah.
And this year, 4,340 yards, 41 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That statistical line is very, very good. He has a strong arm. He's got great vision. He's a guy who's, I think, able to look at the entire field and certainly be able to look downfield. He found and hooked up with his favorite target, James Washington, a number of times. So he's definitely able to see the field and be able to take those shots down the field. So he's clearly got a strong arm. My biggest question with him is, how is he going to fare against tough NFL good defenses? How would he be able to fare against a defense that's coming at you, that's putting a ton of pressure on you, that's in your face all the time? How would he fare against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense? Guys that are, have supreme pass rushers and who are good in the secondary, who are very strong in the secondary. That would be my question, is because when, historically, what we've known is that the Big 12 is not known for their defensive play. They're known for their offensive ability and their high point scoring. Baker Mayfield was unable to beat the team that probably had one of the better defenses that he would play in TCU and in Oklahoma. Oklahoma clearly's defense did not show up in that game because they gave up 50-some points as well, but Oklahoma still was able to win. TCU was able to get the win there too. So Baker Mayfield unable to beat the two teams that ended up going at it in the Big 12 championship game, and who had, I think you could say, the two best defenses in the Big 12. But again, that's just that would be my question. Mm-hmm. It's not that he can't, but that would be my question for me with Baker Mayfield. But I think that with Mason Rudolph, he has come a long ways from when he started off at Oklahoma State to where he's at now and how he finished. This is a guy who I think has a lot of talent, is just the NFL style quarterback that you would want. Now let me quickly touch on Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
Extremely talented, has the tools to be a quarterback in the NFL. But here's my thing is that, notice I didn't say a starting quarterback in the NFL, because we saw with RG3, I think that they're similar. Because they have the similar styles. The run a lot, can run for 100 yards,
but don't slide.
Could pass for 250, 300 yards. And certainly in college. And RG3 did a lot of those same things in the NFL. The RG3, I don't want to say it, but I'll say it, project worked for a couple of years. Where's he at now? We're not seeing him. He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. And am I saying that that's exactly how Lamar Jackson's going to fare? Absolutely not. But is that how quarterbacks of that style have seemed to fare? It seems like it has been a trend, minus Russell Wilson. But Russell Wilson, I still don't think is to that level. Mm-hmm. He's a little lesser, not in talent-wise, but in terms of being both. He's more of a passing quarterback, and he'll run a little bit. But I think that there's certainly the difference there. But Lamar Jackson, again, very talented, but to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, I don't know, and that's why I don't have him on my first draft board.
I've got two things that are for each quarterback that is, both of them I feel like could make the jump into the NFL, obviously. That's why I have Lamar Jackson on my big board, and I even said Mason Rudolph would be a second-round pick for me. The two questions I have about both. First with Mason Rudolph. My biggest question for him is that the Oklahoma State Cowboys come from they're an air raid offense. How many times have we seen a spread guy, an air raid guy come from a conference like the Big 12, have a language barrier that they have to get through, or there's subtle differences between a pro style that you'll see in the NFL and an air raid style that you see at a college. Usually the language for the air raid style is dumbed down a little bit more, and the pro style, it's like, wow, there's a different language here. It's kind of like me if I was like, hey, I want to learn Spanish to go to Mexico. That's how it is. It's learning a brand new language for the offense. Lamar Jackson, I think you hit it right on the head of there are quarterbacks in the NFL that can do it with their legs. I see two examples, though, of which way Lamar Action Jackson wants to go. Do you want to be a guy like Cam Newton, RG3, where RG3's biggest problem was taking the hit, not sliding, not getting out of bounds? He was injured then on that freak stanky leg injury, and really that kind of ended his career looking at hindsight. And then you look at a Cam Newton where had all the confidence in the world, had it shooken up in that Super Bowl. But Russell Wilson, the reason why he makes it work is Russell Wilson isn't a guy that I'm going to go out there and take the hit. He uses his legs to extend the play, and he's always looking downfield to do it with his arm, but can do it with his legs if he needs to, but he doesn't take as big as hits as like RG3 did. That's what Lamar Jackson's going to have to learn. I can do it with both. But if I do it with my legs, I necessarily don't have to get hit every single time. The good thing I like between these quarterbacks, though, low interception numbers. Yeah. Mason Rudolph this year, 9. That ties a career high for him. And Lamar Action Jackson had a career high of 9 last year, had even less this year, had 6 INTs thrown this year. And if I'm a coach, I can look at that and go, hey, I can work with that. Guys that don't turn over the ball and have over 60% completion percentage, I can do that. Guy I want to wrap up this group with is a guy we both had. You had him lower than I. However, there are questions. Denzel Ward, Ohio State. What are you thinking about the cornerback?
Well, I think he's an athletic and he's a quick cornerback. He's got the ability to maintain tight coverage. So he's also a guy who doesn't have a lot of bulk. He can definitely, reach up there. He's got, big wingspan, stuff like that, which I think is going to help him. But since he's not as bulky as, some other cornerbacks, how's he going to be physicality-wise? How is he going to be against the top physical receivers in the NFL? And now, not to call out Eli Apple on this one, but I wouldn't want him to then become like the next Eli Apple, who is kind of one of those cornerbacks who is he doesn't seem to me so far in his year, and it's possibly because he's with the Giants and they've just had a tumultuous season. But Eli Apple has really struggled to stick with receivers. He has struggled to stick with top receivers, physical receivers. He's won some battles, but he hasn't been able to win all of them, certainly because I don't think he necessarily is there yet. But Denzel Ward, he's polished, and he's got long arms. I think that's one thing that's definitely going to help him. When you're trying to go up and it's a jump ball and you're trying to get up there and knock it away or take it away, you can win a lot of those because you got long arms. So that's going to be something I think that's definitely going to help him. And he's a guy that I see being able to be a very, very successful Oklahoma State cornerback in the NFL.
One of the things that I question when it comes to Denzel Ward, and this obviously isn't a deal breaker, but with the NFL, I kind of think about it a little bit. When you think of guys, I'm going to pull up one more cornerback on top of yours. When you think of Eli Apple, how tall is Eli Apple? According to the draft profile from last year, 6'1". Another guy who went in the draft last year who was a cornerback, cornerback safety, that defensive back position. He was actually a safety here, I'm thinking, but I'm still thinking Ohio State. Malik Hooker, 6'1". The thing that I think will be a negative that he'll have to prove wrong for Denzel Ward is, I'm looking at the height right now on ESPN, 5'10". When you're not as tall as, because the thing with the NFL that's different about college, you'll get those taller receivers. The one I'm thinking about in my head is Alshon Jeffrey. How many times, and I'm going back a couple years when he was with the Bears, Jay Cutler, just throw it up there. Throw it up there, catch the ball. Well, if Denzel Ward is on you, then I'm just going to moss you all day. I'm going to jump over you and take the ball from you. That's the thing. The long arms will help, but how much will the 5'10" height hurt? And it'll have to be, okay, where are we matching him up? And is he going to be more of a slot guy?
Well, I think that's where the thing that hurts the most for him is the bulk. I'm not saying that he can't be physical, but I'm saying that you got to have that bigger body to be able to push some of these bigger guys around. Because what's the theme? What's the trend in the NFL right now? They want their 6'5" receivers. They want their 6'4", 6'6" receivers. And when you're going, not saying that a 5'10" guy can't be able to hang with them, because a 5'10" guy can be scrappy, absolutely. But you've got to be able to know that you've got to then know what you've got to play with. You've got the longer arms, so you have that. Or, how are you going to get creative in terms of, to make up for that? I don't want to say lack of physicality. I want to say the lack of bulk.
And the good thing is he does have the thing that you can't, like height, and not really height, you can't really grow a guy, but the frame and the bulk, you can go in the weight room and work up those muscles, build up that bulk. The thing you can't change is what he's got, and that's ball skills and instincts and coverage. Because, just looking at the stats, he's not a guy that's going to rack up a ton of interceptions, only had 2 this year, but he's had 15 pass deflections. Now, the one thing I will say, and this is kind of a good with the bad yin and a yang here, is, he had 15 pass deflections, but 5 of those came in the team's first game against Indiana. So you think about that. One game he had 5 pass deflections, and then the rest of the game he only had 2 against Nevada, 2 against Rutgers, and then 1 against Iowa, Michigan State, 2 against Michigan, 2 against Wisconsin. He also had an INT against Wisconsin, but that's the thing, that 5 of those came in that first game of the year. But the one thing I do want to kind of just end this with is there's one guy I want to ask you about, because he was one where it's like, if we had time at the end, I was going to ask you about him, and that's Connor Williams, the tackle from the Texas Longhorns. On mine, you had him at 20. On yours, he's at 22. A guy that missed, I want to say, 7 or 8 games?
I think
due
7.
to an MCL and a PCL strain in his left knee, played the last 2 games, won't play the bowl game. How do you think that affects Connor Williams coming into the NFL draft this year, being on the offensive line?
Well, I can say that the interesting thing is that Connor Williams is a guy who's often rated as the top offensive tackle in the country in college football. So for him to have this injury, that makes it really interesting. His athleticism, his strength, and his film from previous years is what I think that he's going to have to try and rely on to have a high draft position going into this year's next year's, technically, upcoming draft in April. But I'll tell you what, Ricky, is that injury would worry me. It would worry me. You can have a guy who's got the talent, who's got the skills, but if I'm a general manager, if I'm an owner, if I'm a coach, I need to know that this guy is going to be playing for me more games than he's going to be sitting because of an injury. Because that's number one. Because you're making an investment. Yeah, as much as the player, obviously they don't necessarily have a complete choice. I mean, if the Cleveland Browns want you, most likely you're going to the Cleveland Browns. But you're making a big investment in this player if you're an organization. And we have seen how it has hurt organizations who do not draft well, who draft someone who may be a bust. And again, you do not know if they're going to be a bust or not. You can't. If people knew that Jamarcus Russell was going to be a bust, they would have never tried to draft him. But it's not just about being a bust. It's about going for somebody who you know has a ton of talent, but they have injuries year after year after year, and that sets back a franchise. It really does. So I think that that's where you need to know, and you need to talk to the doctors, and you need to talk to the player and say, are you healthy? Are you healthy? And I think that's number one, because everything else after that, he does have the skills. He does have he's just an athletic guy. When he was in there for Texas, he made them better. I mean, they knew it. They knew it. You could see it. You could see it in the stats. You could see it in the game. You could see it on TV. But when he was not, you could see that too, how much they were hurting off that side. So I think that Connor Williams, if he is healthy, he's going to be a good draft pick.
Well, and just to let everyone know, if we go back to the last NFL draft, we had a mock draft that both you and I came up with the draft, but we talked about it, had him at number 12 overall. So a 12th overall pick preseason now because of and the knee's a tricky thing, especially when you get MCLs, PCLs. Thank God it wasn't a pull or a tear. It was just a strain. He was able to come back, but that is going to be one big question that scouts and team doctors and everything at the combine, he's going to get checked up big when it comes to his draft stock coming in. But if you're on Blog Talk Radio, we're going to get right on to the next one. Before we do, if you're on YouTube, let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section about any of the guys in our 16 through 25. What do you think of some of them? Who did we leave out here that are not in it? I know that's going to be one. You're going to say someone that's going to, he's the number one person on the big board. So if it's someone that you know is going to be there, just wait a little bit. But let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section.